Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff, Mosher, Adam Caplan. And Adam, it is about that time. We've been getting lots of questions on Twitter, Ask ITB, about free agency. We're about a month away from the Combine, and even
actually less than 2 weeks away from the Combine.
I'm sorry. It's less than, I'm sorry. We're about a month away from free agency.
Correct. Yes.
But as you're mentioning, we're less than 2 weeks away from the Combine, and that's where a lot of the conversations take places and watering holes in restaurants in Indianapolis between executives, agents, and people and the like. So we're going to talk about what we're going to do is kind of a two-part podcast as we've done before. This one's going to be dedicated to looking at offensive free agency. The next one will do defensive free agents. Before we even get into that, though, I think I have to share the funny story about the mics, right? I mean, we finally are.
Yeah.
So we bought these mics. We told the listeners, everybody's listening, that we got these new Blue Yeti, nice podcast mics, use a little bit of money we've made through the podcast to kind of give back and improve the sound quality. So last week we did a podcast where I had the mic set up and you didn't have it set up yet. So my sound was probably a little bit better. And then we said next podcast we'll both, be straight on par. And then you got yours set up, but then I was having an electronical issue with my mic that I couldn't figure out. And it took me about a week to figure it out. So this podcast now is the first time that you and I will together at the same time use the new mics. So this should be pretty good.
Mics. Yeah.
It's like a momentous occasion.
Yeah. Thank goodness. So, yeah. And people, one guy said I sounded like Luther Vandross. I thought it was pretty funny. No, but it sounded clear. it does. These sound incredibly
One shining
clear.
Moment.
Very good. Yeah. He actually, he was the second one. Luther Vandross was the second one for the NCAA tournament's theme song, One Shining Moment.
That's right. Who did it first? Do you remember?
Some obscure guy. I looked him up one time, but I actually like the first one. The Luther Vandross one is good.
I don't even know if I'm familiar with the first one. I've been listening to Luther do it for so long.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, nobody beats Luther. What is it, Sinatra?
It's pretty good. No. It's some guy came up with it. I can't remember if he was a songwriter or not. It probably was, but anyway.
Best part of the tournament, no doubt. One shining moment.
Especially at the end of it, sure.
All right, well, that's good. Listen, before we get started, Adam, I want to repeat again, we thank everybody who has given us reviews and has rated the podcast on whatever platform they use. They really do help, so we really appreciate that. Everybody who's been asking us questions on Twitter at Inside Birds, please continue to do so. We're going to do more shows down the road on just answering questions that people have. And then as we get closer, and we're, as you mentioned, with the Combine a couple of weeks away, the website that we're launching, that's going to have a lot of great, not just Eagles content, but NFL content. And we're going to exhaust our notebooks and use all our connections to come up with some really good stories. We'll have more information about that coming soon, but we just want to prepare everybody. We're going to be launching sometime right around the start of the Combine, and we're really excited for that.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So, what we're going to do is when we have information, Twitter gives us 225 characters. It used to be, what was it, 80 before? What was it in the beginning?
I think it's actually 180 now, and it used to be 60 or 65.
Okay, whatever it is, it's just not enough. And I like to give my thoughts. I don't like doing if I put a scoop out, I don't like doing 4 to 5 posts on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
It's just too long. So now we're gonna have space for it. It's good. It's our thoughts on the Eagles, obviously, when we get information or something happens that we feel like we're compelled to talk about it, and then because that way we don't have to wait for the pod. Although we could always do emergency pod. We could give our thoughts and kind of for instance, like when I broke the Deshaun Jackson story last year, I had nowhere to go with it. I just put it on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have anywhere to write 4 or 5 paragraphs. And here's what the offense is going to look like. Here's why the Eagles traded for him. Here's why they actually tried to trade for him a year before, as we reported a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we just don't have that area. So
right.
It's going to be great. And we'll also have the ability to talk about other teams. We know fans. Our fans are smart. They want to know what's going on with the other teams. As a matter of fact, they always ask about players from other teams if they'd fit and how do other teams feel about these Eagles players. So we'll be able to do all that.
Absolutely. And plus, I'll be able to get to do some of the all 22 breakdown stuff I was doing for the Patreon page.
Great. Yeah.
We're going to have scouting reports. We're going to have just a whole lot of comprehensive coverage on things going on with the Eagles and the NFL. So let's get to what people have been asking us about free agency. Like I said, we're going to divide this into two parts. Today we're going to talk about offense, and I think that when we talk about free agency and offense, Adam, we should probably start with the one position that we get asked about the most, and that is wide receiver. I know usually people start off with quarterback, but Eagles are kind of set there. I mean, yes, they need a backup, and we'll talk about that, but wide receiver, and specifically somebody with speed or the ability to stretch the field, we've talked about them having so many draft picks and probably going to use these draft picks, but receiver might be that position that you can't just draft your way to stability there. You may need to sign one or two guys just to have some veterans on there to A, groom the young guys, and B, if your young guys get hurt, you don't want to be back into a pulling guys off the practice squad situation.
Right. So, right. I agree with you. Totally have to sign at least one veteran or trade for one, preferably sign one. Let's start with Amari Cooper. The Eagles offered a second-round pick at the time that Dallas acquired him for a first-round pick 2 years ago. My understanding was a big reason why they had interested in him was because Mike Rowe, their then receivers coach, he recruited him to Alabama. Mm-hmm. So he knows the player. He thought he could coach him. Obviously, Mike Rowe's no longer here. You have Aaron Moorhead. We have some information. I have more on Moorhead. We'll give that to you a future show. But we'll stick to the position right here. Cooper is going to cost an immense amount of money, potentially around $20 million a season. I don't see it. And by the way, he got benched. I don't care whatever is out there. I'm told by multiple Cowboys sources he got benched in the game against the Eagles here in Philly. Mm-hmm. That's not good. Immensely talented player, by the way. I've talked to him. I've been talked about him before. The Raiders wanted him out. John Gruden's group, they wanted to trade him. They just didn't think he was going to be consistent enough to pay the kind of money that was going to cost him. And the Cowboys, Geoff, gave up a first-round pick. And, boy, it looked really good for a while. But it's not just the drop passes. It's just the lack of confidence that he has. He goes into his shell. Right. This is from sources with both teams, by the Cowboys and the Raiders. So I'd be shocked if they got in the race for Amari Cooper.
Let me ask you this. One, I mean, I think we can both say it's probably unlikely because the Eagles, as we've talked about already, they're not the type of team anymore that's going out and getting that A-plus free agent and spending all that money. But also B, if you remember when they signed Alshon Jeffrey, who was an elite free agent, they kind of took advantage of a market that was a little bit drier than Alshon had hoped for, and were able to get him on a one-year deal. Do you think there's any way Amari Cooper, because of what you've mentioned, he's had some injuries in the past, he's had instability as far as, you're right, inconsistency, I should say, drop passes at times. You don't think there's any chance that he takes a one-year prove-it type deal because he just came off of an injured season, do you?
Yeah,
I mean, he wasn't that hurt anyway.
I can't. Well, look, that Eagle game in Philly to end his season was ugly. What was it? I think they played the next week against Washington, maybe, but certainly here that was a nationally televised game. I'd be shocked if Joel Siegel, his agent, couldn't get him a monster deal somewhere. Right. You only need one team to fall in love with you. Yeah, like when they signed Jeffrey, he certainly was not elite. He's a good football player. Mm-hmm. What happened was, because of Alshon's injury history, then he also had a suspension over his time with Chicago. It was more of a buyer beware, where here's a guy who he's not nearly as talented as Cooper, but he didn't have a ton of interest. The other team that had interest in him was Minnesota, mm-hmm. but he couldn't get the offer that he was looking for, so he took a prove-it deal, as you mentioned. And it really worked out well for the Eagles. But as you told us last week, Geoff, and you're right, the Eagles just don't go crazy with free agency anymore. They're not trying to win the offseason like Howie Roseman tried to do it prior to 2016 in his first go-around as GM. He's just not doing that. And that's actually the smart way to do it. Pick and choose your spots in free agency.
Well, let's go to another wide receiver who I think maybe might fit that category a little more, where because of injuries and age, may not get that landmark deal, and that's A.J. Green from the Bengals. I don't know what his market's going to be, and it only takes one team to decide that they think they're getting the A.J. Green of 3 or 4 years ago and healthy. But if it looks like the interest in A.J. Green is not going to be there, do you see Howie maybe trying to get A.J. on another one-year deal and you just pay a little bit more than you normally would for the chance to have him?
I just don't see it. If we're going to take Howie Roseman at his word with older injured players, I mean, AJ Green didn't even play last season. Like, what are you really trying to do? And by the way, same with the case with Amari Cooper, the Cowboys want him back. They want Amari Cooper back, but because they only have one tag, we all know it's going to go to Dak Prescott if they can't get a deal done. So, I mean, I with AJ Green, he turns 32 this summer, right at the start of training camp. Why would the Eagles go after him? That's another one that shocked me. It's not because of the money. They've done
like
deals.
Chris Long situation where he's a little bit older, you get him on a 1-year deal, but he's still a talented player. I don't want to diminish his
yeah, he's gifted. But his agent Ben Dogger has done a ton of he had Asamoah, by the way. Right. He's done a ton of deals with Howie Roseman over the years. He had Jeremy Maclin when Maclin was a rookie. Remember now the Bengals, they were going to sign to an extension before the injury, for that weird ankle injury. If he gets free, I just don't see it. I still think he'll get a good deal. And by the way, that looks like that. That's a typical New England signing. I'm not saying he's going to take a major discount, but look, they've had some luck over the years. The Randy Moss situation is a little different, but I don't see him getting just a 1-year prove deal. That would surprise me.
Okay. Just putting it out there because
you never know.
Sure. Like Alshon, he has a history of injuries, and like you said, he didn't play last year, and teams might be skeptical because of the age and the injury history. You look at some of the other names. Emmanuel Sanders is a guy who's a very productive receiver, but older. 2 year. I mean, I don't see it. Again, Robbie Anderson is an interesting one because he's worth an investment because he's young and he's got speed. He's exactly what the Eagles need. However, like I said before, and I think you'd agree with this, it only takes one in this market to overpay a guy to the point where you say, I'm out on that. And he's the type of guy I think that might get that contract that's a little overpriced for who he really is.
Yeah, he's 27 in May. He does have a little bit of an injury history. And the good thing in recent years is he's shown the ability to play through injury. Now, he had some nagging ones last season, but played through it. He is a tremendous deep threat. The Eagles in two different seasons tried to get him, and they couldn't get him. So it wouldn't surprise me if they looked at him. But now, earlier in his career, he had a pretty interesting off the field history. If you do some checking about Robbie Anderson in Miami and see what that's all about.
Well, even with the Jets, he had an incident with a police officer.
There was something going on. Yeah, there's now he seemingly has put that stuff behind him. I don't get the feeling the Jets are going to bring him back. He's intriguing. Now, I would think they would have interest in. And the other guy the guy that I think is not going to cost you anywhere near that Robbie Anderson would cost you, and I'm a big fan of this guy, is Brashad Perriman. Brashad Perriman 2 years ago, before he was traded to the, I think,
Browns?
Yes. Here's what happened. So I was at Colts training camp. The Ravens came in, and I was there for 2 days, and Perriman just ate them alive. Now, it was the backup corners for the Colts, but he was terrific. And talking to the Ravens about him, they said he just needed to change the scenery. He had a big injury history, a lot of drop passes. Just never really became the former first-round pick that they thought he'd be. And then he goes to Cleveland, and the numbers weren't huge, but he showed that he could play. And then Tampa Bay, when their three top receivers went out, he had to play, and he had a couple of huge games this season. Now he's going to get a big deal here. Would not shock me if he got a deal that's worth $10 million a year. Because he can run and he's young.
Well, does that put him then out of Eagles terrain? This is a guy, as you mentioned, has what the Eagles need as far as being able to stretch the field. He's also a guy, I believe this guy was drafted the same year as Aguilar in 2016. And
Aguilar was 15. Aguilar was 15.
Oh, yeah, you're right. So the year after. Yeah. I think the Eagles paid attention. I'm pretty sure he came to Philadelphia for a visit when he was coming out of college.
Did he? Okay.
Right. I'll go look that up, but I'm pretty sure he did.
Well, he could fly, and he's 6'2", by the way.
Yeah. So is the price tag going to be too high for him? Or do you think this is like,
Great
remember,
question.
we've brought up 2016. It's not like Howie is completely averse to signing a free agent for more than a year or two.
Oh, 2 year structure.
Yeah.
Any team that signs Brashad Perriman cannot go farther than 2 years in structure.
Right.
The only guys who are getting 3 year structures are quarterbacks or guys who are proven players.
Mm-hmm.
Perriman's not getting that type of deal. I don't see it, though. I think he'll have multiple suitors. The good thing for the Eagles is, again, they have good relationships with the agents. He's got Drew Rosenhaus.
Yeah.
That to me is that he's an interesting name, man. Him and Robbie Anderson are two guys that I would imagine the Eagles have some interest in. Now, remember Deshaun, the Eagles owe if Deshaun's off the roster, they're going to owe him over $6 million. I'm told that contract's got offset language, but everything I've been told would suggest that Deshaun will be on the roster. So, I mean, yeah, they need speed, and I would agree. I think they got to draft 2 receivers, and they got to be able to run. They don't have to be speed demons, but they need. This team is my friend Greg Cosell told me on my show on Sirius XM, the slowest offense he'd seen last season. So they're going to have speed. That tells you all you need to know. And he's the true seer, man.
Yeah.
The team is slow. They're slow.
That's true. I'm looking at other wide receivers that you would think might
another one. Philip Dorsett. Now I know
that's who I was about to bring up.
Okay. Here's the problem with Dorsett, Geoff. Yeah, he can fly. Now he was overdrafted by Ryan Grigson with the Colts. But man, when he can't get together with Tom Brady, Geoff, not a good sign.
Well, he's a little bit of a one-trick pony. He's not a whole route tree runner. He's a speed guy, as you mentioned. You do wonder if a team like the Patriots and Tom Brady gets the most out of him, and if he goes somewhere else, like when he was with the Colts, he's not a very impactful wide receiver. So when you compare a guy like Dorsett, if you're looking for, say, value for your dollar, and you're not trying to overspend huge, and you're comparing Dorsett to, say, Perriman, or maybe even someone we've talked about before, Demarcus Robinson, who the Eagles have shown interest in the past and brought in for a top 30 visit. Robinson is younger. He's a good special teams player. And that's been a big focus for the Eagles lately, especially in their free agent signing. So I think when I look at what the Eagles can do here, it does feel like they are going to be more in that maybe Perriman, Robinson, Dorsett market than they are going to be in the Cooper, Anderson, AJ Green market.
Well, Dorsett is only 27. He just turned 27, so he's young. Demarcus Robinson's young, but he doesn't run. He's not, as my chief source told me, he's just not a starting NFL receiver, Demarcus Robinson. He's a good 3.
Right.
He's either a 3 or 4, really good special teams player, but the difference between him and all those other guys is he's way more physical. He's a go up and get the football type of receiver.
He's also not as speedy as people think. He did not run fast. Like a 4.3. But when you watch the Chiefs offense and they get these guys in space, because a lot of people have tweeted to us that they felt that Robinson is a speed guy, and he's not.
No, he's not. No. He's
but he's probably 4.
What's that?
He plays well in space.
Right. He's not as fast as his uncle Marcus Robinson, but anyway,
correct.
You might remember him. Other than that, I'm just going down my list here. No, forget Demaryius Thomas injury history. He's in his 30s. I'm a huge Emmanuel Sanders fan, but he's 33. Forget that.
Right. Travis Benjamin's an interesting name because he had Jester Field in the past, but he's got an injury.
He could run, but another guy I've always liked. But I talked to a guy who worked with him before. He's small. He's about 5'9", and he's got an injury history. It would be too redundant with Deshaun. I just don't see it.
Devin Funchess is kind of slow. I don't think
he can't run. I had a team tell me, Funchess can't run, and he was hurt last season. He should be a tight end. That's how slow he is.
Yeah. So does anybody strike you? Like when we look at this wide receiver position, and we agree that the Eagles needed Ted Ginn, by the way. That Ted Ginn's a guy who has speed. He's
older. He doesn't get hurt very much. He's very inconsistent, but he could run. He could return. He's well into his 30s. For the Eagles, I would put my wish list for them in terms of veteran receivers. I would rank it. This is just me speaking until I get it from them or get it from my sources. But this is, if you and I were running the team for free agents, I'd go Perriman, Anderson, and I would not go after Mari Cooper. I just wouldn't do it.
Which Anderson now?
Robbie Anderson.
Oh, Robbie.
I would go.
Okay.
I would go Perriman. I would take a little bit of a risk. He did have an injury history earlier in his career.
Mm-hmm.
Drop passes certainly is an issue, but he's got size at 6'2". He's bigger than the other guys. He's way bigger physically than Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson's under 6 feet, and he could fly though. It would just really be those two. I don't see AJ Green would stun me. It just would go against what Howie Roseman said.
It's funny how many there are a couple of guys on the free agent market that have Eagles tie. You know, Jordan Matthews, we all know. Russell Shepard from the Giants was with well, you know, was a Chip Kelly cast off from training camp, and he played for a couple of different teams.
He's a slap.
That's funny. There was another wide receiver who I saw. Well, Nelson Aguilar is obviously a free agent as well, and he is not coming. Oh, Danny Amendola, another guy who was.
That was a bad one. They let that get away. It's been so long, I can't even remember. He's been on like 6 teams. I just know he was on the Eagles practice squad. Did he go to Dallas?
He went straight to Dallas, and then from Dallas to St. Louis, and then St. Louis to New England, I believe.
And the Eagles had a chance.
And then Miami after that, right?
Eagles had a chance to. I remember reporting on this. Eagles had a chance to keep him. They declined to move him up to the 53, and well, there you go.
There you go. All right, there's one name that jumps out at me a little bit here. So I'm going to agree with you. If the Eagles want to make an investment, if they're going to be a little bit uncharacteristic for the last 2 years and make an investment, a young speedster like Brashad Perriman to me is the way to go. I like that suggestion. I like him. If they want to look for somebody for value for 1 year, prove it, see what you got. I'm not saying this guy's going to upgrade the team. This is a prove it type of take a risk chance on. You've heard me talk about it before. I know you don't love him, but if I can get him for a 1 year deal, I would bring in Laquan Treadwell and see if
he can't run.
Help.
He's so slow. He's awful. No,
he cannot run, but he is a very good route runner who functions well in space. I've watched hours upon hours of tape on him. No, he can't catch. That's his bigger problem.
He cannot run. I'm just telling you.
I've seen him get open 1,000 times. I've seen it.
How about this? I've talked to guys who coached him, and they told me this. So,
and I have as well. Who say, I mean, he went in the first round at him, and they knew he didn't run a 4.
Doesn't matter. They got it wrong. The Vikings got it wrong. They cut him before.
I understand they got it wrong, but when you watch him, they got it wrong because he drops everything. And if you're getting the only thing he does, you're getting open.
He was an interesting player in college because he could track the ball. I don't know what has happened here.
It's amazing that
he looks so slow and plodding. Yeah, he's
a
nice kid. It just hasn't worked out.
Better horizontal, like in space speed than he hasn't. You're right. He doesn't have vertical speed. I'm not going to sell you on that. But if you could get him to be 80% of what he was supposed to be, you'd get a fairly decent wide receiver. He can play.
I'd say this. I mean, if you want to bring in what's called a make good contract, where there's no guaranteed money. Obviously, no one's given any guaranteed money. She shouldn't have any market. He's what we call the GM's called down the line guy. You sign after the draft. I mean, yeah, you could bring him in, and if he can be your 5th receiver.
No, he's got no offers, and you're just trying to see if you can get something.
That was a. Whew.
Yeah, that was
Rick
rough.
Spielman's a really good GM, and he's not the only one who liked him before the draft, and it turned out to be wrong. I know some guys who did like him, but he's just sometimes the tape lies, and he was nothing like they thought they were getting.
All right, let's move on. Oh, and Ted Ginn, that's another name that we mentioned. That that if you can take a chance,
he's flat. He could still run. He's got to be 35 years old. Let me look. His dad's was a high school coach, I think.
That's right.
I think he's around 35. Man,
Ohio
he's been in the league.
Guy?
Yeah, exactly. I think he's been in the league forever.
Yeah, he's been in the league for a long time. He was with the Panthers. I think he was on the Panthers Super Bowl team.
Drafted by the Niners, right? Oh boy, yeah, I'm right. Yeah. He turns 35 in April.
Wow, that is if you take him off the turf and without Drew, maybe he's not as effective. I don't know. I'd have to go look at his kind of home road.
So let's reset. Okay, let's reset. I'm sorry.
I said I would have to take a look closely at his splits when he's on.
Home and road splits. On grass and outdoors. Yeah. So I would say Perriman. The either you're not signing both. You're going to sign one free agent receiver who could run, Perriman or Anderson. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what I would not be opposed to, just because he's so good. But it's going to cost money because he's still productive. Is Emmanuel Sanders. He's such a leader, and he does everything the right way. You could play him inside or outside. You remember you were saying earlier, and it's a great point about the Eagles really need a veteran, proven receiver.
Yeah.
I'd love to get him for one season. I only want to do one season with him. He may want a 2-year structure, which 2-year structure, folks, means there's fully guaranteed money in year 2, more than the number that cap guys give me. Typically, a team, if the numbers around, if you're getting $4 million fully guaranteed in year 2, you're probably not going to cut the player.
Correct. Kind of like Malik Jackson, correct? Didn't he get basically a 2-year deal? Because you can't just cut him now. You would absorb a lot of dead money. He's going to be on the team next year.
Yeah, Malik Jackson. I think I have his contract.
I was just trying to find that example because a lot of guys sign deals and you can cut him after 1 year. And
he is fully guaranteed. Yeah, it's a lot. It's enough where they're not going to cut him. Correct.
Exactly, and that's maybe what Emmanuel Sanders would be looking for. Again, if Deshaun Jackson's coming back, though, I don't know that they're going to invest even 2 years.
Barring
another guy
based on what I'm told, based on contract structures, there's just I don't see them walking away from over $6 million. I just don't.
No. All right, let's move on to quarterback. The situation is very simple. Carson Wentz isn't going anywhere, but Nate Sudfeld becomes an unrestricted free agent, and Josh McCown's an unrestricted free agent. And after that, the Eagles basically have the kid they got from the Giants practice squad. What's his name?
He's from Philly. Yeah. What's that kid's name? I'll get it.
I want to say Tanny, but I'm not right.
Kyle Oletta.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's not a really, for a team that's really relied heavily on the backup quarterback, they need to do something here.
Yeah. So we're not going to know about McCown, the way I understand it from talking to his agent, until probably sometime in June. My understanding is the Eagles would like to have Sudfeld back.
I don't know if I'm him, if I want to come back.
Well,
not if I think they're going to give the job away to somebody in June.
Well, what kind of market? If you're Nate Sudfeld, you have to look what kind of market you have. I can tell you this: 2 years ago, there were so many teams that loved him, and they watched the preseason tape. Obviously, he got hurt; he broke his wrist. But the 2 years ago preseason tape was incredible. We know that last year's offseason was not great,
right?
So we'll see what kind of market he has. Now, I'm told that on multiple occasions the Eagles had interest in Case Keenum prior to Nick Foles coming in, Geoff. That it was actually either going to be Foles or Keenum, and we know the Eagles brought in Foles. And then Keenum went to Minneapolis, and obviously the Eagles know him for playing him against him in the championship game. Right. So it's a name to keep an eye on. If Case doesn't go somewhere else and the Eagles need a backup and they don't want to wait, he could be in play.
No, I think that would be a very good backup for them to have. There's a couple of guys who I think could be good veteran backups to have. Do I love Blaine Gabbert? No. Could he be a good, decent backup? Maybe. I'll tell you the name, Matt Moore. I mean, he did a good job for Kansas City. I don't know how many years he's going to keep coming back and do this, but he'd be a name.
He was, I think he was coaching. I can't remember what his agent told me. He was doing something football related and was pretty much retired. He had 1 week to, 1 week to prepare to start? It's crazy. It was. He did a great job, man. It's a great one. It's a great name. He is not, the way I understand it, he has not decided if he's going to play or not again. But then, of course, the Chiefs have to make a decision who they're going to bring back as their number 2 quarterback. So we'll remember Chad Henne's contract's also up. But those will be some of the names that Geoff mentioned. Sudfeld.
How about Trevor Siemian? I feel like he's the type of guy that could
be. That's a good name. Yeah, he's in this environment. Yeah, he broke his ankle, I think, last year or something. Like he had a pretty significant injury when he had to play. He was out for the season.
Right.
That's a good name. Yeah, I've never heard him connected with the Eagles, but just in terms of being a good backup, yeah, he's a good backup.
And Colt McCoy. I mean, that's a guy who's very familiar with the West Coast offense.
For sure. Yeah,
he's another guy who's not going to drive the ball deep, but he can come in and, I don't know if I see anybody on this name that I feel could pull a Nick Foles, unless they're able to get like a Ryan Tannehill, maybe a case.
Well, that ain't happening. No,
it's not happening.
Zero chance. Yeah.
Where does Jameis Winston go? He's going to have to be a backup.
Yeah, so quickly with the free agent. So Tannehill's going to get the tag if they can't re-sign him. So what they're going to do, the Titans, is they'll tag, like they're going to try to get both deals done without using the tag. If they have to, one of them gets the tag and they'll have to negotiate. We're talking about Derrick Henry. They're not, neither's going to leave the team. Phillip Rivers that one's going to shake out interestingly because I've got 10 teams needing a quarterback, but 4 of them pretty much, and that includes free agents. So we know Breeze is going back to New Orleans. We know that we know Prescott's going to get the tag. We know Tannehill's going to go back to Tennessee.
So you're
At
not
least
buying the Tom Brady to kick Cowboys
no,
rumors?
I don't
Then?
know where that
Oh,
started.
okay.
And then we know that Joe Burrow is going to go to Cincinnati, so at least 6.
Right.
But that also leaves Brady available, Jameis Winston, Phillip Rivers, Teddy Bridgewater, who now I've talked to 5 teams about him so far.
Mm-hmm.
They all like him, but they see him as a low-end starter, high-end backup. He's what we call a come in and compete for the job. And then Andy Dalton, the Bengals are going to wind up trading him to a team where I'm sure he'd like to compete for a starting job.
Mm-hmm.
So that one bears watching.
Right.
This musical chairs at quarterback, Geoff, is going to be really fun.
Yeah, real quick. Chase Daniel, I mean, just because they had him once before and Doug Peterson
Won't happen.
You don't see him come. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
No. In fact, it was Doug. Doug wanted him. Doug wanted him badly in Philly. That was his first free agent that he wanted. It seems crazy,
Right.
But he did.
And as we know, Doug does not get what he wants.
Well, he got him, but it didn't work out very well.
No, I meant ever since.
Oh, yeah. Right. So we'll see. The Bears, I think, will be looking at another quarterback. But, running back, Geoff, as we transition,
mm-hmm.
I feel like the Eagles want Jordan Howard back, and I'm not saying he doesn't want to be back, but I just wonder, because Miles Sanders is going to be the guy. There is no debate. There's no competition. Miles Sanders is the guy.
You sense that the Eagles want Jordan Howard back, though?
Yeah, I do.
Which is not really what they intended when they traded for him. They were hoping he'd have a good year, he leaves, and then they get a good comp pick.
Well, okay, so let's get into this running back position. So arguably, if they don't get Jordan Howard back, Geoff, who's available who they'd like to bring in? It's going to be cost effective. Remember,
you're right, because you're looking for that kind of guy, right? You're obviously not going to bring in another Miles Sanders, Boston Scott type, because you already have guys. You kind of want a bulldog
size,
a little bit.
Yeah.
Size. No, you're looking at the list. I mean, it's not like there's a ton of guys out there.
No one's shady.
Really
Don't even ask. Don't even ask when shady.
No, I wouldn't.
But fans probably
for one day.
Think about it. I cannot believe they couldn't have the Chiefs didn't want to have him active for the Super Bowl. I don't get that. Jeez.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, they're not regretting it. I'm telling you.
I know, and it worked out very well.
Hey, man, you're right. It's amazing. The list of people here is not that impressive. Most of the guys who are in free agency are. Well, here's a name. What do you think becomes of Corey Clement?
Well, he'll get the low tender, or they don't tender him. I would think they'd tender him because he's a good special teams player. He was terrific, obviously, as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
The last 2 seasons, unfortunately, entered on injury reserve. This is good.
That officially gives them 3 running backs without Jordan Howard.
Right, but a couple things. You could cut the guy. There's no guaranteed money in tenders.
Correct.
You could just cut them. Yeah,
Correct.
So I wouldn't even worry about that. The low tender is just over $1 million. It would be a small surprise if they don't tender him. Now, what are the other backs that we like who could fit?
You got Bilal Powell and DeAndre.
Yeah,
Washington.
he's older. He's good. Bilal Powell's got great versatility.
I really like Bilal Powell. Yeah.
High character guy. He's in his 30s though.
Well, he might be that perfect guy that understands that he's coming in to just carry the ball 5, 6, 7 times when you're up in the fourth quarter. He's not going to be looking to be the man. I still feel like Jordan Howard may find a spot where he's at least part of a committee, 50-50, somewhere else in free agency.
Yeah, Powell turns 32, by the way, in October. Yeah, Jordan Howard, he's still young. High character guy. The Bears. I can just tell. I know from talking to the Bears. I mean, it's funny how things work out. One of their first few priorities were to find a team that would take him last year.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted him off the roster. They just didn't think he fit. And I think we probably noted a year ago, he showed up to training camp this last year with the Bears out of shape. And it just, you said it best. We didn't know what he would do with the Eagles, and I question whether he really fit. Well, you know what? LeGarrette Blount, I question whether he fit at all. In some way, they made it really work. And now it also helps. He was the closer, and occasionally, if they got up early, he would get a lot of work. Mm-hmm. But Jordan Howard, it kind of worked. I think it kind of worked. Now, other backs, I'm not a Peyton Barber fan. He's okay. He could fit. He could catch the ball a little bit. He's a high character guy.
I don't see him on this list. Did I miss that? Is he a free agent?
Peyton Barber's there. Yeah, he's under.
Oh, okay.
Are you looking at my list, my file?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there he is. Barber, Breida. Yeah. Well, Barber might get a little bit of a deal somewhere.
He could. Yeah. He got kind of benched got kind of benched by Ronald Jones. Isaiah Crowell, forget he doesn't fit at all.
No,
Frank
Frank
Gore, we love him, the former Eagle for 30 years. One of my
Thompson,
favorite.
The Eagles should sign Chris Thompson just so he doesn't have to kill him anymore.
Yeah, he had a couple good games. You know what I absolutely love is DeAndre Washington of the Raiders.
Yeah, I like DeAndre Washington.
He would fit. Sure. Good player, high character kid, but I'm sure he would accept his role. Mm-hmm. I don't see it being a big deal. CJ Prosise would fit, but his injury history is enormous, as we know.
Yeah, I just don't know that they need to bring back Jordan Howard. I mean, I guess if you can get him on a discounted deal, Adam, because he wants to come back and there's no suitors. But I want to stay young at this position. I want to stay versatile. So I've got Miles Sanders. I've got Boston Scott. I would re-sign Corey Clement because he's a restricted free agent. It's going to cost you barely anything, and I still think if he's healthy, he can give you something. And then just bring in a veteran who may or may not make the team, and whether that's Washington or Powell or whoever. But I look at this and I say, man, you could even sign somebody. There's probably going to be someone who gets cut that we're not thinking of on a different team. That always changes the game in free agency a little bit. I wouldn't really worry about this position too much.
Or Ty Montgomery, the former receiver, who's now a running back.
Adam Gase, it took 11 weeks for Adam Gase to even dust the cobwebs off that guy. I don't know.
He didn't even use him. I know. By the way, this is the same guy who didn't know how to use Damian Williams, who's a really good running back,
or Ryan Tannehill, for that matter.
Yeah, look, no doubt. Well. So to sum this up, there are plenty of options for the Eagles.
Right.
When we do our combine shows, when I'm there, this is where I get all this. By the way, this is where I got the Frank Gore stuff.
Mm-hmm.
During 2015, was it 2015? God, I can't believe it's been 5 years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you know how I know? Because that was when Chip had personnel control.
That's right.
So this is when I first heard the Eagles had interest in Frank Gore. Then we don't have to spend a second talking about tight end, correct? There's just no reason for that. No, okay. Offensive line, no. Big V.
No, maybe interior offensive line. Maybe.
Oh, you mean guard, center?
Yeah.
Well, it'd have to be someone who's got positional versatility.
Right.
I'm looking at my list here. I mean, there are a bunch of journeyman guys you could find. Center. It's funny, AQ Shipley. Yeah, he's had quite the career, man.
Hey, man, it's amazing how many people on this list have some kind of connection to the Eagles. And yes, AQ Shipley started with. I can't believe he's still in the league.
Yeah, former Penn State guy. Yeah, he's a.
You'll never find a center with shorter arms than.
I know he exactly shouldn't have been in the league, but he's a good story of perseverance. Yeah. So they'll find their guys. Other than that, kicker.
What do you think about Brett Jones? He's an experienced center. I mean,
Brett Jones who played for the Giants and the Vikings.
Let's address this. Do you think they need a backup center, or they just need a backup guard, and Sayamalu would play center if Kelsey were to get hurt?
Yeah, I would think Isaac would. They definitely need a slash guard center
too.
Right, and that's what I was going to bring up. So they could have done with him, with Nate Herbig, is just give him a chance to do it. I don't see, again, being a big deal. Matt Pryor at least showed he could play guard. He did get some time. He got some snaps in. The Jason Peters situation, we'll address that very quickly. They have not gotten with his agent yet, as far as I know. They'll do it no later than the combine. And they could actually do it before then. Mm-hmm. It's real simple, folks. If Peters comes back, Dillard's not starting. If Peters is not coming back, Dillard's starting. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, no. I think the big question that we forgot to address when we did our post-season kind of look through at the roster was we didn't really talk a lot about Jordan Mailata. And I have to think he's still in the plans as long as he's healthy. He was really making strides.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I just don't know at this point, Geoff. He's a tackle. Mm-hmm. Is he? I'm assuming he's going to be the backup right tackle next season. I don't see him playing guard. He's really not a guard. You don't have he's a guy that's this long and this athletic. I just don't know why you'd ever play him at guard. I know fans have asked us about that. I just don't see it.
Right.
I've never heard any talk about it. I know Peterson's been asked about it, but I don't know that he's even got snaps there.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the only question about Mailata is if Peters leaves, you're asking they're going to have to go out and get a backup. They're going to have to get someone experienced to be a backup tackle. You have to,
and that's not an easy position to find. I mean, there's a lot of teams with bad tackles to begin with. I don't know. how you find a backup tackle that you're really comfortable
Big V
with.
would be that guy, but I'm told he wants to start, so it's highly unlikely he's going to return.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Eric Flowers.
Well, guys like
we laugh at Eric Flowers, but he could play backup.
He could play guard. Yeah, he's
a
a guard tackle. Yeah, he's more of a tackle than guard, but he played guard last season.
Dennis Kelly is a free agent. Speaking of
what a story he's been. Yeah, Dennis Kelly.
He could catch touchdowns too.
Yes, he did. He caught a touchdown. I'm sure the Titans want him back. He's their top swing tackle, swing offensive lineman. Andre Smith, the former first-round pick of the Bengals, who's older than dirt. There are plenty of guys out there. But the fact of the matter is for the Eagles is they've got some decisions to make. I'm glad you brought up Mailata because the guy looks like he's got a chance to be really good, but he with the back issues, you got to be careful. It was a disc problem, by the way, I'm told.
A disc problem. Okay,
yes,
was that the same problem from the year before, though? Was that a no surgery, right?
I don't know if he rehabbed it or had surgery. I don't remember now. It's been so long, so many months, but I just know he had a disc issue, which I'm told was fine. He's fine now, and but they can't depend on him. It's reality.
Marshall Newhouse and Rashad Hill are guys that are easy to criticize because they've had to start for both New England and Minnesota, and when they start, they look bad. But those are two veteran backups who, if you needed them to play a few snaps or a game, and you got a good quarterback like Carson who can get away with it, get away from the pressure, that may not be a bad option right there.
Newhouse I'd rather have, and Donald Penn, who could play right or left tackle, is definitely a left. He's played some right late in his career.
Right.
If Trent Williams goes back to watch, Donald Penn, who's up, would not be back to be starting. So keep an eye on him. So there are plenty of guys out there, but as Geoff said, the lower you get on the list, the more risk you take, and that's just the reality of free agency.
Right. Age, injuries, all those things factor in. All right, so that was our review of offensive players in free agency. I think we pretty much went through everybody that we might see on the Eagles' radar or who the Eagles will have discussions with when they're out in Indianapolis in 2 weeks. Or fit. Yeah, we went through a lot of names there. I want to take maybe one or two Ask ITB questions, but first, I'm going to pause for a word from our great sponsors. Hey, it's Geoff Mosher. Adam Caplan and I love using Anchor for our Inside the Birds podcast every week. It's so user-friendly, anyone can create their own podcast, and you should too. Just download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Anchor gives you everything you need to start your own podcast from your phone or computer. Its creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast for a professional sound, and Anchor will distribute your podcast for you to Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and so many other platforms. It can be heard by everyone, just like Inside the Birds. You can also make money from your pod with no minimum listenership. What are you waiting for? Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to create your podcast today. Hey, it's Geoff Mosher. Are you interested in money? Yep, I thought so. Well, on the Talk Money with Mesh Lakhani podcast, Mesh will follow paper trails, chat with experts, and break down complex ideas to bring clarity to the mystical financial phenomena and help listeners uncover the story behind their money. Each of these compelling stories will hit a broad range of subjects ranging from buying Bitcoin, dealing with student debt, and everything in between. So if you're interested in money, and I know you are, check out the Talk Money with Mesh Lakhani podcast on Anchor. All right. Do you have some questions in front of you, Adam? Or if not, I can pull them up real quick for Ask ITB.
Yeah. Remember, it's hashtag Ask ITB on Twitter.
I love that people are just sending us questions now throughout the week.
It's funny. We didn't have to. It's exactly right. We don't even actually have to ask anymore. They're just there, and there's some good ones.
Mm-hmm. I have one here I can read if you want.
Yeah, go ahead,
it's from Carolina_Gator at Twicker36. And he asks, everybody knows Wentz had an MVP-like season in 2017. I think that offseason was when he decided to work with Tom House. Do you know if he's doing that again? This is the first offseason he's been healthy since that offseason. That's a good point, by the way, that this is the first offseason Carson's going to have since he was drafted, where he can literally just work on his craft.
Yeah, no rehab, no injuries. You're exactly right. Mm-hmm. No, actually, here's what happened, Carolina Gator. The truth of the matter is that, yes, he did work with House, but the big deal was that DeFilippo changed his mechanics. What happened was Carson the process of him throwing the football was way too long. Carson would hold the ball lower, he'd raise it and then throw it. It would take too long, so DeFilippo changed it. He had him hold it higher. I know this. Carson was not totally receptive to it in the beginning because, he'd thrown a certain way his whole career, and he was being asked to do this as a professional. But I remember, Geoff, I could see it in front of me. It was the OTAs in I'm going to say June. All of us that were there saw it. He took a major jump. We're like, oh my God. I know great quarterback play when I see it. I saw Tom Brady come to Philly, Geoff. Remember when he came to Philly for those combined practices when I think Tebow was on the Patriots? He was like 25 for 25. Every pass was with anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
Carson was so great. I was like, whatever DeFilippo did with him worked. That's really the truth of the matter. That's exactly why Tom House had less to do with it than DeFilippo did.
Right.
And John obviously is probably the best quarterback coach in the league in terms of development.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, I'm not saying Tom House didn't help. He probably helped, but it's really it was really what the coaching staff did with him, and now it's really Press Taylor's job. And quite frankly, Press has got to do a better job. We outline exclusively on our show here the issues with Carson's footwork, and that's got to get corrected.
All right, good question from Carl Taylor at CETST11. And he agrees with us about not trading away picks. The Eagles shouldn't be doing that too much. But he asks, wouldn't it be worth it for the Eagles to trade up to land Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, or Henry Ruggs? All three seem worth parting with an extra pick or two. To that, I would say, first of all, take Jeudy out of the equation because he's going to probably be top 5. And then to get into the top 5
top
where the Eagles have
sure. Top 10 for
sure.
sure.
Top 10 for sure. You'd almost have to give up another first round pick or a first and then a second. You'd have to give up a lot to get to Jeudy.
I wouldn't do it. Yeah, right. I mean, we're talking about a receiver here, not a quarterback. Yes, they had. Look, they got to help the quarterback. This is on the front office to do this, and they're going to be very aggressive in doing it. But I wouldn't do that.
No. Now,
this is.
I'm not against that. I'm giving up. Look, if they're within 3 picks and they want to move up a little bit,
yes,
to get Ruggs
yeah,
or Lamb,
absolutely,
fine.
Just like they did with
we
Taylor.
Just don't want them doing. We don't want them to come out of this thing with 5 or 6 guys instead of 8 or 9 or more guys.
No, this is what they did with the kid from Miami who turned out to be a bust. The D end. Who was the second? This is what the 01 draft. I'm talking about the kid.
Jerome McDougal.
You got it. Yeah, and that was the guy who was the second best DN of the draft. And oh my God, it was awful.
Yeah, that was
rough. Look, not that they knew they didn't have it right, but you don't do that. You don't trade up from 21 into 5 for a non-quarterback. You just don't do that. I mean, the Falcons, the only team that's really gotten it right doing that, I'd have to look up the compensation. The Falcons gave up for Julio Jones, who's going to be a Hall of Famer. Those are rare. I just personally would not do it.
All right. We're going to save some of these questions for the next, because we're going to answer a lot of them. So, because we're up almost about 50 minutes here. So we've given a lot of good content.
Wow.
Answered some questions. I know we went through a lot of free agents there.
Holy smokes.
So that's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. We want to thank everybody who's involved. 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you're downloading their free mobile app. You can hear me with Mike Gill and Ryan Rothstein every day from 2 to 6 p.m. PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fan experience with the coverage of the Flyers, the Sixers, the Eagles, and the Phillies. Pitchers and catchers reporting. We're all fired up for the Phillies, and you'll find some great coverage of the Phillies on PHLSportsNation.com. Of course, we thank our producer, Hunter Brody, and you can catch his work at Sports Talk with Broads on YouTube and all the great Philadelphia passionate fan takes he's been giving. And Hunter's been doing a little enterprising journalism himself, going to some games as a member of the media and tweeting out some videos and putting them on his site. Yeah, he's making the move. He's moving up in the world. So good for Hunter, and make sure you check out his YouTube page, Sports Talk with Broads. Make sure you check out our YouTube page, Inside the Birds, on YouTube, where we have a lot of good video content. Adam, in 2 weeks, will be going to the Combine. Correct, Adam?
Correct. My 21st.
I'm positive you'll be taking some videos there, doing interviews like you did at the Super Bowl and refreshing.
Probably what I'll do, though, the setup is completely different, Geoff, than from when you probably went.
Yeah.
We don't get the access that we used to get. It's just not it's just not as good in terms of getting in front of the players. But the great part about it is we do get the GMs, we get the head coaches, and trust me, although I get there on Tuesday, I think I'm going to probably miss Howie Roseman speaking, unfortunately.
I think a birdie told me they might be Wednesday.
God, I hope they change it. Man, that would be great. That'd be great. So we'll see, but we'll have plenty of content, man. It's going to be great.
No, you know what? You're right. Tuesday around noonish, probably. So
yeah, that's what I saw. So anyway,
okay. Well, hopefully we'll be able to get it.
We'll get a ton of content. I'm not worried about it. Not even remotely worried about it.
Well, as always, we thank our listeners. They're great. We love them. The interaction. We couldn't do it without you. We thank you for flying with us inside the birds.
If you're listening to this, you obviously like podcasts, and you probably like music too. On Spotify, you can listen to all of that in one place for free. That's right, you don't need a premium account. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. You can download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are. You can easily share what you're listening to with your friends via Spotify's integrations with social media platforms like Instagram. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. Just search for Inside the Birds on the Spotify app or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. And follow me, Geoff Mosher, so you never miss an episode of Inside the Birds. Spotify is the world's leading music streaming service, and now it can be your go-to for podcasts too.